So happy afternoon, everyone. On behalf of Burlington English, I would like to welcome you all to yet another webinar on a wonderful topic. I am Meena, and with me, I have here Dr. Shayanti Talwar, who will be taking us through this wonderful topic, teaching vocabulary, collocations, and connotations. Over to you, Shayanti.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Meena. Thank you so much for having me today on this platform. And yeah, thanks for the introduction. And thank you, people, for participating and for registering for this webinar, which I hope proves to be enriching and beneficial in some ways. It's a vocabulary webinar for starters, and today we'll be looking at collocations and connotations. So, why do we need collocations and connotations? And firstly, do we know what they mean? So, if you look at collocation and connotation, which we will be dwelling at length, so the workshop first aims at looking at what these are, understanding the nature of collocations and connotations, their role in developing and acquiring a language, and then the practice activities which we can conduct for our students, and also maybe for self-enhancement. So collocation basically is, it's a very nice tool. It's an effective feature if we are looking at developing our fluency, our comprehension, our awareness, if we are looking at cognitive shortcuts, so and also accuracy. So today's topic is actually very good for developing developing the proficiency levels of fairly advanced users of English, because these features come at a more advanced level. They don't come at a basic level. So let's see what we have here. So I'm going to, can you just think of the words that go here? Every breath you, and you can type it in the chat box and say number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, and number 5. So every breath you, number 1, and put the word. Every move you, number 2, and put the word. Let's see if you can do this.
We have one response from Ms. Amrita Bhattacharya. Take.
Yeah, fine.
So
Meena?
Amrita ma'am says, every breath you
Right,
take.
right. So I got this. Okay, that's right. Every breath you take, every move you make. Very good. Take and make. Every bond you break. Very nice. Every step you. Again, take. I'll be watching. What is number 5?
Number 5.
Yes, you. That's right. So thank you for your responses. Now, my question to you is, did these words come almost automatically to you as a whole when you saw it in the context of the phrase, or did it come to you in fragments? So if you look at this, maybe it came to you as a whole. So every breath you take, that is how we speak, we don't say every breath you make or every move you take. Though I may be conveying the same meaning, I took a move, but it's not the same as saying I made a move or every move you make. So it's just that some words go better with some other words, and that has been the convention in the language. So collocation is about developing that awareness, that which words are married to which words in English, right? Okay, so this was just a brief example, and this is again, we are doing a loop input approach, so you can also pay attention to the kind of practice task that the slide shows. So if you see, this is a drop down task. Okay, so you need to choose. from drop downs, and you need to choose the correct option. The next one, what do you think? It's a choose out of two options task. Every single, what would it be? Day or play? You can quickly put it in the chat box.
We got responses. Day.
Day. Every word you
Say.
That's right. Every game you play, right? So this is how it goes. So we know when we are saying every single play, no, probably every single day. It has to be every word. You don't stay a word, you say a word, right? So this is collocation. And if you look at the nature of the exercise, it's choosing one out of two. And then here, do you see this is unjumbling and reordering the words. So what will be the order of the first line?
Oh, can't you see?
That's right. Right? So this could be another exercise pattern where you're checking collocations. And then I'll be watching you every smile you, and now you can rearrange the whole sequence. So this was just to give you a brief idea of what collocations look like. Now let me make it more comprehensible for you. Now, for example, you're in the kitchen and you are playing around with ingredients, right? Now, some combos sing very well together, like tomato and basil, or if you have curry leaves, they go with your seeds. What are those seeds? Mustard seeds, right? You will not normally use cardamom or cinnamon with curry leaves, so cardamom, cinnamon, and cloves are one family, and then you have mustard seeds and curry leaves, another family. So collocations are exactly like that, your kitchen ingredients. Or perhaps if you are dressing up for an occasion, you will not wear a formal shirt on a pair of shorts, right? I mean, I know people do it all the time when they are attending Zoom meetings, that they dress up very formally. Upper half of their attire is very formal, and they're wearing probably shorts or something. But normally, if you go somewhere physically, you will not do that, right? So formal trousers go with formal shirts, t-shirts go with jeans. So certain words go with certain words. So that's the logic behind collocations. And when you pair these words, the best part is that they combine to make delightful, memorable phrases. And those phrases remain in our minds and they roll off our tongues effortlessly. So, what happens is when a learner uses all of this, uh, it shows the proficiency level. It takes the proficiency level of the learner to another level altogether, right? And it sounds very natural. The learner sounds very fluent, almost like a native speaker of the language. So now let's look at some examples. First, we look at the definition and then we'll go to the examples. Now, here are three definitions of collocations. So they are 2 or 3 word clusters which occur with a more than chance regularity throughout spoken and written English. So their occurrence with each other is not a chance occurrence. It is more than that. It is convention to put them together, right? The second definition talks about a marriage contract between words, and some words are more firmly married than others. And then the third definition, if you see, it says they naturally go together, right? So, for example, we may have word clusters, but they needn't be collocations all the time. And I will show you what I mean by it. Now, here we have some examples of collocations. Okay, so for example, if we see this particular collocation, give it all up. Now, this is a combination of 4 words. Now, if I were to change this, if I were to say give all of it up, it does not mean the same as give it all up. Or if I were to say give up completely, then too, it doesn't mean what I'm trying to say through give it all up. Hmm. So, the meaning changes. So if I say, and if I say give it up, then, and if I miss out all, then I'm losing the emphasis and the meaning again changes. So basically, you cannot substitute any one word, you cannot omit any of the four words. That is what a collocation is. Let's look at another example, absolute limit. Now try substituting limit. We can't say absolute boundary. We can't say absolute confine. So it's only limit that goes with absolute in that context. And the word is pretty much indispensable. That is what collocation is all about. So it's about word partnerships, right? No other alternatives will come to the mind straight away. That is what, so you will have noun adjective collocations, you can have verb preposition collocations, you can have noun adjective verb collocations, right? So this is how the logic of collocations work. Now let us look at why are collocations important. So firstly, we have identified that for students who are already at an upper intermediate level or an advanced level of English, using English, they may be very good users of the language, they may have their heads around the language, but they may not have the range of vocabulary which a native speaker of the language has and which they show effortlessly, right? So this is where collocations come handy, that it shows it broadens the range, it expands the range of vocabulary, and it also shows that the learner is very confident and very fluent, right? And also, if you look at users of English who are second language learners, that is, who study English not as their mother tongue, who acquire it in formal environments, for them, it is a learned language, right? So collocations won't come as naturally to them as they would to a native user of the language. And that is why it is important for them to be exposed to collocations. Let's see what this says. So the essentially simple idea that word choice is seriously limited by what comes before and after is perhaps the single most elusive aspect of the lexical system and the hardest, therefore, for learners to acquire. So what will go before a word, what will come after a word, is perhaps the most challenging part of learning a language. And therefore, it takes a certain level of understanding. Only when the learner is at a certain level, they can begin to understand collocations and they can begin to get there. So let's look at why collocations are important. A is fluency. The learners are able to use the language more fluently, effectively, and in a more natural way, right? Then comprehension. So collocations help understand very nuanced meanings. They improve understanding and comprehension, and they also facilitate effective communication. And then we are looking at accuracy. Accuracy is, of course, like we saw, that certain words are indispensable. You can't replace them. You can't substitute them. You can't do away with them, right? So they have to be there. And that is, if the learner is using collocations correctly or showing an awareness, it shows that they are at a certain level where they can use the language accurately. Also to sound more natural. So you may have come across learners or people who speak English, but maybe they sound a bit robotic, as if they are talking, they are reading from a script, So collocations give language a sense of authenticity. They give language a flowy feeling, there's a flowiness to language. And they allow conversations to flow more fluidly. So it sounds as if the person is chatting rather than reading out. So it is very important to master collocations if you want to master the art of sounding natural in a language. And also if you want to sound like native speakers. So for example, let me share an example with you. Now let's look at these two phrases, do a mistake and make a mistake. Which is the right one? Can you put it in the chat box? Which is the right collocation?
We have some responses. Make a mistake.
That's right. So it's make a mistake. Now, do you think if the user uses do a mistake, they won't be conveying the meaning? They will be. I did a mistake, but it doesn't sound right. Right. So it is about sounding right also. So when you say I made a mistake, it shows that you have that certain level of awareness, which is required at a higher user level to boost understanding. Now, what does this mean? Earlier, I mentioned a phrase called cognitive shortcuts, and we are going to look at how collocations ease comprehension. They ease the understanding process. Because when we encounter well-known word combinations, our brains don't need to work overtime. They will process it very quickly. So we instantly grasp the meaning. And therefore, what happens is collocations actually add that nuance also. They make us aware of word combinations, but they also give us shortcuts. So where maybe I'm using a complete sentence to try and convey something, I just use two words that are collocations, and I convey it very simply and very effectively. We will look at it in the course of the webinar. We will see some examples to enrich vocabulary, right? So when you're using collocations, you are expanding your lexical range. You're expanding the kind, you are broadening your scope of using more and more words, different kinds of words, different kinds of word combinations. So collocations definitely enrich vocabulary by broadening the range of expressions and enabling more precise and varied communication. Right. So, for example, instead of, say, let's look at this. Instead of very good, you say highly beneficial or extremely useful. So, what happens? You are using other phrases. So, you're not sticking to only very good. You're using phrases that will be apt in that particular context, right? So, highly beneficial, extremely effective, or extremely useful will broaden your lexical range. And everybody likes variety. It gives that richness to your expressions, right? It makes you sound more stylish. If you are writing something and someone is reading at the other end, it leaves an impact on the reader. Now, earlier when I was talking about cognitive shortcuts, if you read this, you will see what I meant by it. Now, this is a paragraph or a couple of lines on the traffic scene in Delhi. Okay, so the writer over here has written, I think driving in Delhi is very difficult because of the anger people feel in the cars. Can somebody replace this with a collocation, a phrase that describes this part of the sentence? You can put your answers in chat. Do we have anything, Meena?
We do have some responses: road rage, frustration, furious.
Absolutely. So road
anger
rage.
issues.
Yeah, thank you.
Impatience.
Thank you. So I think driving in Delhi is very difficult because of road rage. That's it. So you see the anger people feel in the cars. There's a collocation for that. So you're saving on so many words. You just say road rage and it's conveyed. They abuse others and get very angry and sometimes even become violent. Another problem is with the traffic police. They don't control very well which cars are coming which side, when to stop on red lights and when to go. Now, can you think of a collocation for this part?
Traffic control, uncontrolled. They have commotion, follow traffic rules, traffic sense,
So
regulate
actually, if we,
traffic. I
okay,
think they did not get the question.
no, it's okay. So,
Yeah.
no, because they did the first part, so they have got the second part. But what I'm looking for, the collocation is they don't regulate the traffic. So with
They did
traffic,
mention regulate
they did.
traffic.
Yeah, thank you. So here, so this was an example of cognitive shortcuts. So when you use certain collocations, your brain, saves on the effort of going through, and you are saving yourself, sparing yourself the effort of writing 2 3 lines. Now look at how many words, how many lines these are. You can just write regulate traffic, and that explains everything, right? Okay, now let's look at this one. Manav's father was angry because he had hit the car on the pavement and damaged it. So, can we think of just maybe a collocation here?
An accident. Had an accident.
Uh, but we are talking about the car. So, can we have something to do with the car?
They've given crashed,
Very good. So, he had crashed his car.
collided,
Actually,
damaged.
no, so those are not collocations. He had crashed the car. That's it. So, car crash, we talk about. So this is what is meant when we are talking about collocation. Now, I'm going to just go to some. So if you look at this example, this one, for example, he has a disability for his whole life. Instead of that, you just say he has a permanent disability. That is easier. So you put permanent here, you remove all these 4 words, right? Now look at this one. What do you think is wrong here? There is a collocation here, but is there anything wrong about this exchange? The boss is saying, Rani, please call in Rohit. And Rani says, Rohit's already left because you turned up late today. Can you share your observations on chat?
They are responding, arrived, were late, came, fired.
No, no, no. Actually,
To be
Rani
punctual.
is
That's
telling
the
her, 1 minute, Meena. Rani is telling her boss that boss Rohit has left because you turned up late. So she's telling her boss that he has turned up. Any more responses?
no, it's we are getting the same responses. Showed up, turned up, delayed, came late, not a polite one.
Yes, very good. Thank you for that one. Not polite. Do you see the problem here? Rani is a subordinate. Sorry. Rani is a subordinate here. And when she's telling her boss that you turned up late today, probably she's not a native speaker of the language. Her awareness is not that good. And that is why so it has an undertone of accusation, which is uh, probably not appropriate given the context, because there's a certain hierarchy over here. The boss is her superior. So all of this, so there's a problem here, right? Because if she's using this, she's obviously, it is grating to the ears. It's not a proper uh, collocation. So it is a collocation, but it's not properly contextualized here, right? Now let's look at some tips to master collocations. Before I share with you, why don't you put in chat, what do you think? How could one develop, now that you have a fair idea about collocations, how can one develop an awareness of collocations?
Reading newspapers, reading and
Yes.
listening.
Mhm.
Most of them are saying reading. Okay, I've got one more: using phrases, vocabulary improvement, talking, listening to conversations,
Excellent.
practice in daily life.
Excellent. Thank you, Meena. Now let's look at this. See, there you go. Speak less, listen more. So when we listen, what we do is when we expose ourselves to the target language, what we're doing is we are not just assimilating the sounds of the language or the words individually, we are assimilating the entire operating system of the language. So it's like installing a software in us. So the more you listen, and it also what you listen to also makes a difference. So listening to podcasts, listening to probably watching web series, or listening to cricket commentaries. So there are different genres, right? So if you want to develop collocations in the area of sports, maybe you listen to more sports commentaries. If it's politics, listen to more news. If it's finance, then you could look at collocations related to finance. But the moment you expose yourself to listening input, what you're doing is you're downloading the whole software. So there are lots of structural patterns which you download, which your mind processes, and you internalize the vocabulary, you internalize the structures, you internalize the conventions of the language, and after a silent period that this is what goes with this. Right. So even songs are a great way of picking up collocations, because wherever there is a more nuanced and creative use of language, like, for example, in the newspaper, you might want to go to the editorial page where you will get a lot more collocations, right? Or if you're reading a feature story, that will have more collocations. Or if you're watching stand-up comics, they use a lot of collocations. If you're listening to songs, you'll pick up collocations, right? So because these are all about, these genres are actually looking at embellishing whatever they are presenting, right? Embellishing, enriching. So you have to so obviously it's a finer use, it's a more aesthetic use of the language. And that is what happens when you so when you expose yourself, you are, I mean, I'm not saying you'll internalize the whole of it, but a steady and consistent exposure will definitely get you something, right? Like somebody, I mean, people responded on the chat box. Absolutely.
Most of them.
Authors, journalists, bloggers, they don't just throw words on papers or screens. They weave them very carefully. They are artisans. They are craftspersons, right? So they weave these words together, and they make their prose sound more natural. They make it sound more relatable, and they will sometimes use phrases that are light, familiar, yet impactful. So probably you might read somewhere the company took drastic measures to tackle the issue. So drastic measures, that's a collocation, right? So even if it's a report or something, you will hit upon a collocation. So expose yourself to the genres that you like, and probably just approach them with an awareness. Like somebody said, practice. Remember when you were learning to ride a bike? The first few tries might have been shaky, but eventually, with enough practice, you got there. So, whenever we start doing something, it's always going to be difficult, right? You go swimming, and you feel like your lungs are going to explode, right? The water is cold. Uh, the water is against you. It seems you don't have any sense of having any control over your body. It can be scary. So you will see children, they are naturals. So anything that is taught at a formative stage, we internalize it more effortlessly. At a later stage, it is always more difficult, but with conscious and consistent practice, we can do it. And so try using it consciously. For example, if it's cold, you might want to say it's bitterly cold, or there's a nip in the air, instead of just saying it's cold. So try bringing in whatever you have assimilated and is part of your passive vocabulary into your active usage. Somebody said conversation. See, you know it all. Yes, you have to engage in conversations, because otherwise, how are you going to use what you have assimilated? Right? So, one of the best ways to get comfortable with anything is to actually immerse yourself, right? So, you can strike up conversations with native speakers if possible. But if you can't, then you can converse amongst each other, and you can have a target of maybe, okay, I am going to say something and I will be using 5 collocations today. You can set up activities like that also for your students, right? Hmm. Um, so and if you're teachers, you can develop flashcards as teaching aids. So we have teachers normally use flashcards, so you can use them for collocations too. It's a fun and effective way to reinforce whatever is learned. Now, over here, I have a very interesting tool, which is called Collocate. It's a resource, and it's an online tool, and it focuses on the register of academic English. And what this project aims at developing is that it helps writers choose appropriate collocations, and it has an interactive text editor. Okay, so what happens is, when writers write something, it and they want to change it, the Collocate will help them with collocations. I will show you how it works. So if you look at this part, you see there are advantages over. Okay, now there are so many options to this. Do you want to say selective advantage? Do you want to say mutual advantage? Do you want to say unfair? All these are collocations, words that go with the word advantage. And then there's a extended phrase, a part of a sentence, which shows how it will, what it will look like if you use this particular, say, obvious advantage. So the obvious advantage is the focus. So this is a longish context. So you know exactly what to use with a particular word, what kind of collocation, right? And then if you look at, so these are more advanced features. See, this comes when clicking on more. If you click on more, you will have a sidebar which appears with additional collocations. Okay, so this is how this works. And then say if you're clicking on strategic plus advantage, students can access simple sample sentences, sample English sentences on this. This is another tool. It's called Sketch Engine for Language Learning. And this is based on a billion word cloud corpus consisting of authentic text. So you can imagine the bank, the corpus they have, and it's a cloud corpus, right? So it's online. And if you see here, it's just the first 12 entries that are shown. So these example sentences are taken directly from the underlying billion word corpus, and they allow learners to discover the rules and patterns of the language, as also the exceptions and the limitations also. So this kind of data-driven learning through examining examples of the collocation in question gives your students a very accurate picture of how language is patterned, right? So what you can do is, you can see that Collocate has a, it's got an interactive space over here where your students can put in their text, right? And then what they can do is they can embellish this text further with by using the right kind of collocation. We'll see. So and it's a website, so the students do not need to download any software. And the text that learners write in this space are also not viewed or stored on the website. So the students, if they want to save their work, they must copy and paste their text into the regular text editor. Okay, so now here, if you see, the original text is entered, and all the there are certain words that have been underlined. These are the node words. Now what happens is this. Let me show you what happens. So here, if you see, these node words have been underlined a bit. So education is essentially about equipping children with the ability to act responsibly in a society. Now here it is, the level is enhanced, the vocabulary range is expanded to say in an increasingly complex society. So do you see how collocational usage lifts the language, upgrades it to another level? Reflect upon acquired knowledge. Now here it's just reflect upon knowledge and ideas, acquired knowledge and ideas. So what happens is you're constantly grading it to a more complex, difficult and richer level. So you might feel that, oh, this is an aid and they're getting ready-made stuff for them. No, so it's okay. Even if they're getting this help, they are also registering these words, these collocations, right? So they are assimilating at the same time. And because they are going to pick and choose and decide between collocations, so it's also exposing them to that entire range. So it's a good thing, actually. Now, what kind of exercise can you give students to practice collocations? You can actually give them texts like these, and you can ask them to find examples of collocations in the text. So that takes care of reading, it takes care of assimilation, and you're also giving them a purpose to read, right? So they can come up with 4 to 5 examples of collocations. Can you please read the text and come up with some collocations and put them in the chat box? I'd like to see if you were able to spot some collocations.
So we've got a few responses now. Formidable summer, being a boon, distinctly Mediterranean. Drawing to a close, storage capacity.
Very nice. Thank you so much.
Being
Meena.
a boon.
Thank you. Yes. Also some more which are simpler. Yeah, drawing to a close was mentioned, characterized by seasonal slump, water shutdown, right? So this could be an effective activity. Now I'll show you another activity where it can be, where you do a prediction exercise. So you just show parts of the sentences and you wait for responses from students. So big trees are incredibly, and this is along the lines of word association, right? So big trees are incredibly what ecologically? Can you put in the chat box?
They've written tall, beautiful, standing high.
So we have to understand ecologically.
Helpful and organic.
Okay.
Massive.
So the word is important because you have to see what has gone before the word and come after the word, right? That is how you decide a word. So it won't make sense if you are saying big trees are incredibly tall ecologically, because it doesn't go with ecological, right? Tall doesn't go with ecological. It might go with incredible. So we have to consider both words. So for a start, what do they do to other species? And you have to also look at this context, that they're important ecologically, so they must be.
So we've got some responses. Harbor, benefit, support, protect.
Yes. So the word is sustain. Very nice. Now this is an easy one.
Provide, give.
Yes, thank you. They provide shelter. So do you see exercises like these? They engage the learner in multiple ways. So when the learner is coming up with one word which will fit into a particular sentence, the learner is choosing that word from a range of words. So the learner is also summoning a lot of other words. So you see how you are activating and stimulating the learner's mental faculties. So the exercises may seem simple, but they are very, very complex. They work on multiple intelligences, right? Now, if you see, this is the whole text. So they are incredibly important. And we just did the first 3 lines. Okay, moving on. You can also ask students to reconstruct the content of a text from a few words. So what happens is this serves to highlight the central importance of collocations as against individual words. Now, there are software programs which are good for this, but you can also do the activity using a smart board. You can put a dash for each word, and whichever word you want to blank out, and then you can put numbers against each dash and then get the students to suggest the words and the phrases the way we did earlier in the gap fill, right? So do you see how these words are disappearing? So you omit certain words in a longer text and you can ask them to reconstruct it. Now, can you identify the domain these words are from? Which discipline or which field do they belong to? Broad field.
Some are saying bank, marketing, business,
Yeah, so it's
advertising.
yes, so it's business English, right? So what you can do is you can ask students to brainstorm some nouns on a particular subject. You can specify, okay, today we are going to do business English, or we are going to do look at words related to tourism, travel, and then ask them to come up with brainstorm words and come up with collocations for words. So there are plenty of combinations which you can work on. These are some of them: verb, noun, noun, verb plus adjective plus noun. But I'm going to really rush through this because there's plenty more to cover, and we are still to do connotations, right? Okay, so for example, now again, and then you can do error pointing also, error correction. So for example, if you're taking hobbies, now a hobby, which hobby does this visual depict? To you, what does this visual stand for? Which hobby does it stand for? Can you put it in the chat box?
Music, listening to music.
That's right. But a common error which language learners make is they'll say listen music. So you can correct them. It's listening to music. Or for example, what is this hobby?
Swimming.
Yeah, but the collocation would be what comes
Swimming
before
is
swimming?
taking a swim. That was one that I saw.
Okay. Or it could be go swimming, right? So normally learners are not aware about go swimming or go shopping or go riding. So you could actually introduce or work on specific domains, specific lexical sets, and then fine tune their collocations. So if it's hobbies, you can, iron out all these errors, right? So this is an interesting visual which just depicts that words hunt in packs. Okay. So it's like collocations, words come in packs, like wolves hunt in packs, words also hunt in packs. You can also, if you're doing a listening exercise, what you can do is you can give them the transcript. You can make them do a prediction task where they fill in the blanks, and then you play the song and then they cross check if they have the right words, which reinforces the collocations, right? You can do find someone who activities. You can have find someone who questions, like for example, find someone who has been on a strict diet. So strict diet is a collocation. Who has found themselves in an embarrassing position. Embarrassing position is a collocation. So the more the learners use these kinds of collocations in surveys, the more it'll become a part of their active vocabulary, right? And then you can have collocation bangs and stuff like that. I'm just going to skip a few here. This is an interesting one. Spot the odd one out. So, which is you acknowledge shame, or you feel shame, you express shame, you make shame, hide shame, overcome shame, admit shame. Which is the odd one out here? So it's obviously make shame. You don't make shame, right? So you can have exercises like this for your learners. And then you can have gap fills. So many words: fried, poached, fresh, raw, frozen, grilled, smoked. What is the word over here which goes with all these adjectives? So it's actually, can someone write it in the chat box?
They've given two responses repeatedly: eggs and meat, potato.
You don't have smoked eggs.
Some have said chicken.
And you don't have poached potatoes.
Fish.
Fish, that's the right.
Salmon.
Yeah, it's fish actually. So this is again another interesting activity which you can do. Then you can do a spidergram like this. So for example, you take this make, and then you brainstorm all the collocations and slot them in categories. So if you're looking at producing a reaction, so make someone happy, angry, mad, sad. If you're looking at plans and decisions, so make an arrangement, a decision, a choice, a plan. So in this way, you can have word maps, right? Now, moving on to connotations. Now, what does mean? There are certain words which have several meanings, layered meanings. They are called lexicosemantic variants. So, for example, so they are also called polysemitic words. It's called polysemy. So for example, you have bright. Now, bright could be shining when you are referring to an object, but it can also be metaphorical, where you're referring to an attribute. So it can also stand for intelligent, right? And then there are words which are monosemantic, which means they have only one meaning. For example, if you say hydrogen, it can't stand for something else, right? Hydrogen means the gas hydrogen. Molecule means what it means. But if you're looking at words like this, they can mean, this reminds me of Robert Frost's poem, two roads diverged in a yellow wood. So there, yellow stands for autumn, right? So it's not just the color yellow. You're talking about a season of the year. So there could be a metaphorical use. And when that happens, or I table this I table this bill, or she sat at the table, or so sometimes it can be a piece of furniture, sometimes it can be a verb, an action word, right? So whenever there are several meanings associated with words, it's polysemantic, which means multiple meanings. So words, if they need to be studied, there are three levels for words. One is the sense of the words, a word which means a very general significance. For example, when we say the word coin, we normally we will understand it as a small metal unit of currency. And this is the denotation of the word. That is the definition of the word. Okay. Now, one word can have a range of senses in which it is used. So, for example, a coin can be a verb, that she coined a new name. Or if you look at the word bank, the word bank can refer to a business that deals with money, the side of a river, a verb meaning reply, rely, and a verb meaning deposit money. So, and then you can say word bank, or I'm banking on her. So which means I'm depending on her. So these are all senses or denotations. Reference is the next part. This refers to the actual thing I mean. So for example, if I'm saying the coin on the book, so I'm referring to an actual object I know about and I'm making the speaker aware about. No, I'm not referring to coins in general or to coins in a museum. Okay. Now the third part is connotation. Now, what is connotation? This refers to a second level of meaning, which is above denotation. and is often personally or culturally determined. So, for example, if I were to show you this, what happens is, if I were to give you this example of doctor and quack, now both mean medical practitioners. But if you look at the connotation, quack has a negative connotation and doctor has a positive connotation. That is the difference. Okay. Uh, and there could be several others like youth and teen, or speech and sermon, or police officer, or copper cop, dirt and filth. Yeah. So one will have a regular connotation, one could have a negative connotation. Right. Then there's, okay, I'll just go to the important one. Now, see, denotation. By denotation, we mean there's a dictionary definition. So what is rose as per the dictionary? It's a flower. Uh, it's a flower. It has a certain texture. It has a certain number of petals. It has a definite shape. It comes in colors. So that's the denotation of the word rose. But connotation would mean love, passion, romance, death, duality, depending on the cultural context, right? So connotation is the deeper meaning and the emotional or cultural associations that a word carries. So every word is loaded with meaning, and that meaning is usually connotative, and it can be negative, positive, or neutral, right? Again, another example would be curious and nosy. So both mean inquisitive, but curious has a positive ring and nosy has a negative ring. Or for example, let's go to this one, home and snake. Now, if you look at home, it's something made of bricks and cement, and it is painted and it's a structure. But home, but it also connotes something like warmth, something like shelter or comfort, family, all of that. Snake, it denotes a legless reptile, but often connotes danger, deceit, treachery, right? So these are conceptual, uh, you know, conceptual variants of a particular word. And that is what we mean by connotation. So, like I said, that they can be positive or negative. If we look at aroma and stench, so aroma both mean smell, but one is positive, one is negative. Mob versus crowd, again, negative, positive. Selective versus picky. And what are some exercises that we can give students? So this is a very good exercise where what you can do is that, see, here, the word in italics is a fairly neutral connotation. So you can ask your students that for each word, they have to come up with two synonyms, one which has a positive connotation and one which has a negative connotation. So there's an example. Sometimes my thin friend annoys me. So negative would be scrawny and positive would be slim, right? And similarly, doing all the others. So smell, we saw aroma and stench. Inexpensive could be cheap and thrifty. Or let's look at something else. My, hut. Uncle John lives in a hut deep in the woods. So you can either call this a shack or you can call it a cabin, right? That way. So you're sending your students to other reference sources, maybe like a dictionary or a thesaurus. So you are enabling them to increase the range of references, consult those, and also increase the range of vocabulary. This is another very interesting exercise, which I like personally a lot. Now, this is a short context. Bill cooked dinner for Kath. He prepared some meat and vegetables and a special dessert. Very neutral. Now, describe the meal that Bill prepared, making it sound appetizing by using words with favorable connotations, or describe the meal, this time using words with negative connotations to make it sound quite unappealing. So, the same thing, but the connotative use of language to either present it in a favorable way or in an unfavorable, right? So there are more such examples of this. So you can identify sentence, or you can create your own like this. And so you see, after sundown, the park was empty, dark, and quiet. This is neutral. Now you describe it as either a peaceful place or a frightening place, right? Now, why is this important? One is to set the tone and mood of the conversation. Secondly, it aids in persuasive communication, and also it is all about cultural sensitivity. So it's very effective for cross-cultural communication, as words may carry different connotations in different cultures. So that was that. And yes, if we look at how we actually look at understand words, so there's the sense over here, which I spoke about, there's core meaning, and then there's also encyclopedic meaning, which means historical meaning, the etymology maybe, and the extended meaning of the word. Then there's the reference, where I'm talking about a particular thing in a particular context. And then finally, connotation, where you have a personal connotation and you have a cultural connotation. This is generally shared knowledge. So when I am saying something, the speaker and I, if we share, if we belong to a particular culture, the same culture, we understand each other better and we use the same kind of connotative language, right? The same strategies, active reading, active listening, right? And practice and repetition, which I actually mentioned in collocation also. So here you have collocation dictionaries, and then you have online tools that we spoke about. You have a corpora to explore, and you have practice exercises. And so you can use all these resources. And yeah, that's about it. Thank you so much. So this is how you understand, and basically it's about a very subtle, nuanced, and more advanced use of language. And that brings us to the end of our presentation. And thank you so much for being with me. And thank you very much for being so responsive over chat. I really loved your engagement and hope you had some takeaways from this session. I know it was a lot of input, but I hope you have some takeaways. So Meena, are they supposed to scan this? Or
Yes. No, I don't think so. They're not
all
supposed
right.
to.
So thank
Okay.
you very
Thank
much,
you.
all of you. And thank you, Meena, for having me. Have a lovely
Thank
evening.
you. Thank you,
Yeah.
Shanti. Have a lovely evening. And thank you all the participants for your wonderful responses and your participation.